Lights hummed overhead as Rachel Williams flipped through my promotion application like she was checking yesterday's weather report. 20 years of aerospace engineering, 47 system designs, and more crisis fixes than I could count, all condensed into a portfolio she barely glanced at before sliding it aside. "I appreciate your dedication, Scott," she said, adjusting her MBA certificate on the wall behind her. "But after careful review, I don't think you're ready for senior management. Maybe we can revisit this in a year or two." My name is Scott Morrison, I'm 47 years old, and that moment changed everything. Not ready. That's what she said about a guy who'd been designing defense systems since before she graduated high school. I just nodded and smiled, the way you do when your 35-year-old boss tells you that 2 decades of keeping America's jets in the air doesn't qualify you for leadership. "I understand," I replied. "Thank you for the feedback." "Great. Glad we're aligned," Rachel said, already checking her phone. "The Northbridge contract needs your attention today. They're requesting system modifications before finalizing the $75 million deal." As I walked out, I passed the corner office that should have been mine. Through the glass, I could see the view I'd earned but would never get to enjoy. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck and looked at myself in the mirror. The guy staring back wasn't angry or hurt. He looked like he was planning something. I started the engine and made a decision that would change everything. I was done being the invisible expert who made everyone else look good. Let me tell you how I got here. When I joined Apex Systems 20 years ago, defense contracting was different. You earned respect through results, not PowerPoint presentations. I'd spent my career designing flight control systems, the kind of software that keeps $100 million aircraft from falling out of the sky. Not glamorous work, but essential. My specialty was legacy system integration. When the Pentagon needed their new F-35 avionics to talk to 30-year-old ground control systems, they called companies like ours. When Navy destroyers needed radar upgrades that wouldn't crash their existing defense networks, I was the guy who figured out how to make it work. Rachel arrived 18 months ago with her MBA and a head full of buzzwords about digital transformation and agile methodologies. She'd never written a line of code or debugged a critical system at 3 a.m., but management loved her because she spoke their language. Words like synergy and optimization rolled off her tongue while she delegated the actual technical work to people like me. Meanwhile, I was the guy who actually made things work. When the F-35 integration had problems that stumped Lockheed's own engineers, they called me. When the Navy's new radar system crashed during sea trials, costing them $2 million in delays, I fixed it in 72 hours. I'd trained 15 junior engineers, documented countless procedures, and built relationships with contractors that took years to develop. But I wasn't leadership material. The drive home that evening gave me time to think. Jennifer was working a double shift at the hospital, so I picked up Kevin from baseball practice. At 17, he was already talking about engineering school, following in his old man's footsteps. "How was work, Dad?" he asked, tossing his equipment bag in the back of the truck. "Interesting," I said. "Had my promotion review today." "And?" Still thinking it over. I wasn't ready to explain corporate politics to my son. Not yet. That night, after Kevin finished his homework and Jennifer got home from her shift, we sat at the kitchen table going over college applications. The numbers were staggering. Even with Kevin's grades and baseball scholarship potential, we were looking at $40,000 a year minimum. Jennifer worked extra shifts whenever possible, but my salary as a senior engineer was barely keeping up with inflation. "We'll make it work," Jennifer said, rubbing my shoulders as she stood behind my chair. "We always do." She was right. For 20 years, we'd been the dependable couple. I fixed critical systems at work, she saved lives at the hospital, and we raised a good kid who was smart enough to get into any engineering program he wanted. But dependable doesn't pay for college. The promotion I'd just been denied would have meant a $25,000 raise. Not life-changing money, but enough to make Kevin's education plans realistic instead of stressful. I kept thinking about Rachel's words. Not ready. What exactly did that mean? I'd designed the core systems that Apex built its reputation on. I'd saved contracts worth hundreds of millions. I'd mentored half the engineering staff and documented procedures that kept the company running. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't lacking qualifications. I was suffering from being too good at making other people successful. Every morning for 20 years, I'd arrived early to review overnight system alerts and prepare briefing notes for management meetings I wasn't invited to. Every evening, I stayed late to fix problems that others had created or overlooked. In between, I answered questions, solved crises, and trained junior staff, while Rachel took credit for our department's smooth operations. The morning after my rejection, I made a simple change. Instead of arriving at 7 a.m. like I had for 2 decades, I showed up at exactly 9. No early prep work, no getting ahead of problems, no informal mentoring sessions with the junior staff. The security guard, Phil, looked surprised when I badged in at 9:02. "Running late today, Scott?" "Actually, I'm right on time," I replied with a smile. For the first time in years, I walked past the engineering bullpen without stopping to check on overnight issues. I didn't review the crisis board or scan through priority emails. I just went to my desk, logged in, and started working on my assigned tasks. Brady Collins from procurement stopped by my desk around 10:30 looking confused. "Scott, did you see the email about the Northbridge timeline conflict?" "Yes," I replied, continuing to type. He waited, shifting his weight. "So, can you resolve it like you usually do?" I looked up from my screen. "That's actually a project management issue." I forwarded it to Rachel. His eyebrows shot up. "But you always handle these things." "I've been advised to focus on my core responsibilities," I said with a slight smile, trying to demonstrate I understand my proper role here. Brady left looking confused, and word spread quickly through the office. By lunch, 3 people had asked me similar questions about problems I usually handled automatically. Each time, I politely redirected them to the appropriate department head or suggested they follow standard protocols. The Northbridge situation was particularly interesting to watch unfold. Their $75 million contract involved integrating our flight control software with their existing avionics package for a new fighter jet variant. The integration required deep knowledge of legacy protocols that I'd spent 5 years documenting, plus relationships with subcontractors who'd been working these systems since the 1990s. Rachel tried to handle it herself, but within 2 hours, she was drowning. The technical specifications alone were 400 pages, cross-referencing another 200 pages of Federal Aviation Administration compliance requirements. Without my usual translation of engineering speak into management language, she couldn't even understand what the client was requesting. At 2:30 p.m., she appeared at my desk again. "Scott, I need you to jump on the Northbridge call at 3. They're asking technical questions that are over my head." "I'd be happy to help," I said, "but I have the monthly safety compliance review at 3. It's due to the Department of Defense tomorrow. Can't someone else handle the safety review?" I pulled up the assignment chart on my screen. It requires someone with level 5 security clearance and certified systems architecture experience. That's just me and Tom Bradley, but he's at the Pentagon this week for the submarine contract meetings. Rachel's jaw tightened. "What about after the safety review? The Northbridge team is West Coast. They'll be gone by the time I finish at 5. She walked away without another word, heels clicking against the floor like gunshots. That evening, I got home at exactly 5:30 for the first time in months. Jennifer was just getting ready for her evening shift at the hospital, and Kevin was in the driveway shooting baskets. "You're home early again," Jennifer observed, checking her watch. "Trying out this new thing called work-life balance," I told her. She laughed. "What's the catch? In 20 years of marriage, you've never been home 2 nights in a row during project season." "Maybe I'm finally learning," I said, kissing her goodbye. "Drive safe tonight." After she left, I helped Kevin with his physics homework. He was working on projectile motion calculations, the same mathematical principles I used every day designing missile guidance systems. "Dad, why do you need to know the exact trajectory?" he asked, erasing an equation. "Because if you're off by even a few degrees, a $50 million missile misses its target by miles," I explained. "Precision matters when lives are on the line. Is that what you do all day? Calculate missile paths?" "Part of it. I also designed the software that helps pilots control aircraft in combat situations. If my code has a bug, planes crash." Kevin looked up from his homework with new interest. "That's actually pretty cool, Dad. I never really understood what you did." Neither did my boss, apparently. My phone had been buzzing all evening with work notifications. I ignored them until Kevin went to bed, then checked the messages. 15 missed calls from various work numbers. The voicemails told a story of escalating panic. Message 1, 6:30 p.m. Brady. "Scott, the Northbridge team is confused about the integration timeline. Can you call them back?" Message 5, 7:45 p.m. Rachel, we need to talk first thing tomorrow morning. Message 12, 9:20 p.m. Someone from night shift. The automated testing system is throwing errors on the F-35 module. The documentation says to contact you for override procedures. Message 15, 10:15 p.m. Rachel again, sounding frantic. Scott, I don't care what time you get this. Call me back immediately. I set the phone down and went to bed. For the first time in years, I slept 8 full hours without waking up to check work emails. The next morning I arrived at exactly 9 a.m. to find the office atmosphere had shifted overnight. Engineers clustered in worried groups near the coffee machine. Rachel was visible through her glass office, pacing while talking on her phone. The usually calm administrative staff looked harried and stressed. I settled at my desk and methodically organized my tasks for the day, noting which ones were actually within my job description and which ones I'd been handling out of habit. Scott! Brady practically ran to my desk. Where have you been? Everything's falling apart. I was here until 5 yesterday, then went home, I replied calmly. My contract specifies standard business hours. But the overnight system alerts are handled by the night shift supervisor. That's Marcus Williams. Did you contact him? Brady's face went blank. Marcus left the company 6 months ago. You've been covering the overnight alerts since then. Interesting. I'd been doing Marcus's job for half a year without any additional compensation or recognition. That explains the extra workload, I said. Someone should probably hire a replacement. But right now, I'm focusing on my assigned responsibilities, I interrupted gently. I have 3 compliance reports due this week that I've been postponing to handle other people's emergencies. Before Brady could respond, Rachel's assistant appeared. Scott, emergency meeting in conference room A. Now. I gathered my notebook and walked unhurriedly to the conference room where Rachel sat with Regional Director Jason Foster and 2 people I didn't recognize, probably Northbridge executives joining by video. Scott, Jason said, relief flooding his voice. Thank God, we need your expertise immediately. I sat down and placed my notebook on the table. Of course, how can I assist? Rachel looked like she hadn't slept, dark circles under her eyes, coffee cup trembling slightly in her hands. The Northbridge integration is completely stalled, she said. They're threatening to pull the contract if we can't deliver the modified flight control protocols by Friday. That's unfortunate, I said. What seems to be the problem? The problem, one of the video conference participants interrupted, is that we've been trying to get technical answers for 24 hours and nobody at your company seems to understand your own systems. I nodded thoughtfully. Flight control integration is complex, especially when interfacing with legacy avionics. May I ask who's been handling the technical discussions? Rachel shifted uncomfortably. I've been leading the client relationship. I see. And do you have experience with real-time embedded systems programming? Silence. What about Federal Aviation Administration certification requirements for military aircraft software? More silence. Knowledge of NATO, STANAG 4586 protocols for unmanned vehicle integration? Rachel's face was getting redder by the minute. The issue, I said calmly, is that this integration requires someone with both the technical expertise and the security clearances to access the underlying system architecture. That's a pretty specialized combination. Jason leaned forward. How specialized? In the entire industry? Maybe 50 people at Apex Systems? I paused for effect. Just me. The room went dead silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming and someone typing in the distance. Jason's face had gone pale, while Rachel looked like she'd been hit with a brick. Just you? Jason repeated slowly. Well, Tom Bradley has some of the technical background, but he's missing the security clearances. And he's at the Pentagon until Friday, which is when Northbridge needs their answers. I opened my notebook and pulled out a pen. Would you like me to walk through the specific requirements? The Northbridge executives on the video call were looking at each other with expressions that clearly said, "What kind of operation are these people running?" Scott, the lead Northbridge engineer, said through the screen, "We specifically requested you by name for this integration. Your reputation in the defense community is why we chose Apex for this contract." That was news to Rachel. Her head snapped toward the screen like she'd been slapped. "We've worked with Scott on 3 previous projects over the past 8 years, the engineer continued. Every time, he's delivered exactly what we needed, on time and under budget. We assumed he'd be leading this integration from day one." Jason was taking notes furiously. "Scott, Why wasn't this communicated to me earlier? I glanced at Rachel, who was staring at the table. I wasn't aware my client relationships were a factor in the promotion decision. Perhaps it wasn't properly documented in my performance reviews. That was a polite way of saying Rachel had been taking credit for work relationships she'd never built. The thing is, I continued, this integration isn't just technical. Northbridge is planning to use this system on contracts with 3 other defense manufacturers. If we deliver successfully, we're looking at potential follow-on work worth $300 million over 5 years. Now I had everyone's complete attention. However, I said, glancing at my watch, I should mention that Lockheed Martin contacted me yesterday with an interesting opportunity. They're looking for a senior systems architect to lead their new defense integration division. Rachel finally found her voice. You're leaving? I'm considering my options, I replied calmly. The compensation package is quite generous, and they've offered me a signing bonus that would cover my son's entire college tuition. Jason set down his pen. What kind of signing bonus? $150,000 plus a 40% salary increase. The numbers were real. Lockheed had called 6 months ago, but I'd turned them down out of loyalty to Apex. Funny how loyalty works when it only goes one direction. When do they need an answer? Jason asked. End of the week, Friday. The same deadline as the Northbridge contract. What a coincidence. Jason and Rachel exchanged glances. Through the video screen, I could see the Northbridge team whispering among themselves. Scott, the Northbridge lead engineer, spoke up. If you do leave Apex, would you consider consulting directly with us? We'd hate to lose access to your expertise just because of corporate changes. Before I could answer, Jason jumped in. That won't be necessary. Scott, can we table the Lockheed discussion and focus on Northbridge right now? What would it take to get this integration back on track? I opened my notebook to a page I'd prepared that morning. The integration requires 3 phases. Phase 1 is updating the core flight control algorithms to interface with Northbridge's avionics package. That's about 40 hours of programming work. Phase 2 is testing and validation, which needs to happen at their facility in California. Phase 3 is documentation and FAA certification support. How long for all 3 phases? Rachel asked. If I focus exclusively on Northbridge and hand off my other projects? 2 weeks. But I'd need authorization to travel to California for the testing phase, and I'd need a technical team to handle my routine maintenance work while I'm focused on this. Jason was nodding. Done. Whatever you need. There's one more thing, I said. Northbridge will likely want me to lead the follow-on integrations for their other contracts. That would require a more senior position with project management authority. What kind of position? Jason asked. I closed my notebook. Director of Systems Integration, minimum. Ideally VP of Technical Operations with full authority over engineering project assignments. Rachel's mouth fell open. That was 2 levels above my current position. The Lockheed offer includes VP-level responsibility, I added, plus stock options. Through the video screen, the Northbridge team was nodding approvingly. Having a VP-level contact for their projects would make their lives easier. Jason looked at Rachel, then back at me. Can you give us a few minutes to discuss this internally? Of course. I'll be at my desk working on the Phase 1 algorithm updates. I left the conference room and walked back to my desk where Brady was waiting with a stack of urgent requests. Scott, the overnight test results show failures in 3 different modules. The night shift couldn't figure out how to restart the automated systems, so they've been down for 6 hours. That's a problem, I agreed. Can you fix it? I looked at the error reports Brady handed me. All 3 failures were in systems I'd designed or modified over the years. The restart procedures were documented, but the documentation assumed you understood the underlying architecture. These systems need someone with level 5 clearance and senior engineer access to the core databases, I said. That's me, Tom Bradley, who's in Washington, or... I paused, thinking. Actually, just me and Tom. So can you fix them? I could, but I'm supposed to be focusing exclusively on Northbridge. Jason just authorized me to hand off all other projects. I handed the reports back to Brady. You'll need to contact Tom in Washington or wait until Monday when I can get to them. Brady's face went white. These systems are running the test protocols for the Navy submarine contract. If they're down through the weekend, we'll miss the delivery deadline and face a $2 million penalty. That does sound serious, I agreed. You should probably escalate that to management immediately. As Brady hurried away, my phone rang. Jennifer was calling from the hospital. "How's your day going?" she asked. "Interesting," I said. "I might have some good news about Kevin's college funding situation." "Really? What happened?" "Let's just say my value is finally being properly recognized. I'll tell you more when I get home." "Scott Morrison," she said in that voice wives use when they know their husbands are up to something, "what exactly are you doing over there?" "My job," I replied. "Exactly my job. Nothing more, nothing less." "And that's causing problems?" "It's causing clarity," she laughed. "I'll have dinner ready when you get home. Try not to burn the place down before then." After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and looked around the office. Engineers were hurrying between meetings, phones were ringing constantly, and through Rachel's glass office I could see her gesturing frantically while talking on the phone. For the first time in 20 years, I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was hired to do, and nothing more. It was amazing how much chaos that created. By 4 p.m., the situation had reached full crisis mode. The Navy submarine systems were still down, costing the company $50,000 in penalties for every hour of delay. The Northbridge integration was stalled, with their executives threatening to walk away by Friday. And now 2 other major clients were calling with technical questions that nobody could answer. Jason Foster appeared at my desk looking like he'd aged 5 years in one day. "Scott, we need to talk. My office, now." I followed him to his corner office, noting that Rachel was conspicuously absent from this conversation. Through his windows, I could see the city skyline where Lockheed Martin had their regional headquarters. They were still waiting for my answer. Jason closed the door and gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Let's cut to the chase. What will it take to keep you here?" I pulled out a folder I'd prepared that morning. "I've given this considerable thought. The position I'm discussing with Lockheed isn't just about money. It's about recognition, authority, and the ability to build something meaningful." "Such as?" "A technical excellence program. Right now, Apex treats senior engineers like expensive technicians. We fix problems, train junior staff, and maintain systems, but we have no voice in strategic decisions. That needs to change." Jason leaned back in his chair. "What are you proposing?" "VP of Technical Operations reporting directly to you. Authority to hire and develop technical talent, budget control for engineering projects, and a mandate to document and transfer institutional knowledge so the company isn't dependent on any single person." "Including yourself?" "Especially myself. What happens if I get hit by a truck? Tomorrow? Half of our critical systems have undocumented dependencies that only I understand. That's not sustainable." Jason was taking notes. "What else?" "Salary, $180,000 base, which matches the Lockheed offer. Stock options tied to contract performance. And I want to hire Tom Bradley as deputy director when he gets back from Washington. That's a significant investment. The Northbridge follow-on work alone will generate $300 million in revenue over 5 years. The Navy submarine contract is worth $120 million. Both are at risk right now because we don't have proper technical leadership structure." My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Kevin got accepted to MIT early admission, full scholarship interview next week." I showed Jason the message. "My son just got accepted to MIT. Between his scholarships and this opportunity, I can actually afford to send him there. That matters to me more than corporate politics." Jason studied me for a long moment. "You've been planning this conversation for a while, haven't you? I've been planning my career for 20 years. This is just the first time anyone's bothered to ask what I wanted from it." He closed his notebook. "Done. VP of Technical Operations, effective immediately. I'll handle the board approval and paperwork. But I need you to fix the immediate crises first." I shook his hand. "I'll have the submarine systems restored by 6 p.m. and the Northbridge integration specification ready by tomorrow morning." "What about Rachel?" "Rachel's good at client relations and project coordination. She just doesn't belong in technical management. I'd recommend moving her to business development where she can use her MBA skills effectively." As I walked back to my desk, word was already spreading through the office. Brady intercepted me at the coffee machine. "Is it true? You're the new VP?" "Apparently so. What happens now?" "Now we fix these systems and get back to doing what we do best." It took me 3 hours to restore the submarine testing protocols. The problems were exactly what I'd expected. Configuration errors that cascaded through 3 interconnected systems. With the right access codes and understanding of the underlying architecture, it was straightforward work. The Northbridge integration took most of the next day, but by Friday afternoon I had a complete implementation plan that their engineers approved enthusiastically. More importantly, I documented every step of the process so other engineers could handle similar integrations in the future. 6 months later, the transformation was remarkable. I'd hired 4 additional senior engineers and implemented a comprehensive training program. The Northbridge contract had expanded to include 2 additional aircraft variants, and we'd landed 3 new defense contracts specifically because of our technical capabilities. Rachel had moved to business development and was excelling at client relationship management. She still didn't understand the technical work, but she no longer needed to. We'd built a system where technical experts handled technical decisions and business development focused on client relationships. The most satisfying change was cultural. Junior engineers now had clear advancement paths and mentorship programs. No one worked 60-hour weeks as a matter of course, and critical system knowledge was documented and shared instead of hoarded. Kevin started at MIT in the fall with a combination of academic scholarships and my employee education benefits. During his first semester, he called me from his dorm room. "Dad, I'm taking a software engineering class, and the professor asked if anyone had parents who worked in aerospace. I told him about what you do." "What did you tell him?" "That you design the software that keeps fighter jets from crashing and help engineers solve problems they can't figure out themselves." "That's a pretty good summary. He wants to know if you do a guest lecture about real-world engineering applications." I'd be honored. That weekend, Jennifer and I drove up to Boston for Kevin's first college baseball game. As we sat in the stands watching him play, she asked, "Any regrets about how things went down at work?" I thought about it. No regrets. But I learned something important. What's that? For 20 years, I thought being indispensable was job security. Turns out, being indispensable without recognition is just exploitation. The key is making sure people understand your value before you become indispensable. So what's your advice to Kevin when he starts his career? Document everything you do. Build relationships with colleagues who respect your expertise. And never let anyone convince you that doing great work quietly is somehow more noble than getting credit for it. The most important lesson, though, was simpler. Your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. Sometimes you have to create conditions where denying your value becomes impossible. If you've ever felt invisible despite being essential, remember this: strategic withdrawal beats aggressive confrontation every time. Let your absence speak louder than your presence ever could. And if you found something valuable in this story, remember that every workplace has Scott Morrisons, experienced professionals whose quiet expertise keeps everything running. The smart companies recognize and develop that talent. The others learn about its value the hard way. Sometimes the most powerful move is simply stepping back and letting people see what happens when you stop caring more than your share. Your decades of experience aren't just history. They're irreplaceable competitive advantages that companies can't download, outsource, or replace with younger talent. The most effective way to prove your worth isn't working harder or longer, it's strategically demonstrating what happens when your expertise walks away.